A spate of reforms undertaken by the government has led to the current slowdown in the country, Amitabh Kant, the CEO of policy think tank NITI Aayog, said on Friday. This came as a note of caution from the senior official as he was advocating a series of policy decisions to revive the economy. Firstly, you need to bring in greater levels of liquidity. Secondly, you need to revive the animal spirit of the private sector. You can never create wealth without the private sector. Thirdly, the government needs to get out of business in a range of areas and you need to recycle a lot of government assets such as roads. We have done this with airports. Gas grids, gas pipelines, transmission lines should be privately owned. NITI Aayog has recommended a vast range of public sector for privatization. Once we have private sector coming in, bank credit will start flowing in and this is critical. Fourthly, we must push for major structural reforms as we did earlier. Mr. Kant said at a Bloomberg NEF summit held in New Delhi. One of the reasons for the slowdown is that it has had too much of reforms, GST, IBC, RERA, a huge set of reforms which we have undertaken, and I think the next round of reforms must revolve around sectors like oil and gas, mining, coal. We must commercialize coal mining, railways, and they will really drive the growth in India, he said. Talking about the government's push for electric vehicles in the country, the NITI Aayog CEO said that the government would work to develop India as a hub for manufacture and export of EVs. We have lost out on the mobile revolution, photovoltaic revolution, telecom equipment revolution. We are a nation of massive domestic demand, but all this demand we import. We will not allow that to happen in the electric vehicle world. We will ensure that India becomes a global hub for manufacturing and exports. Mr. Kant said at the summit in New Delhi. Bloomberg NEF released a report on the future of mobility in India and has forecast that India may become the fourth largest passenger EV market by 2040 with 26 lakh vehicles. China, US and Germany will top the table. J&K parties on Friday warned the centre against any dilution in the constitutional status of J&K, and sought the government's clarification on the current hysteria in Parliament. India has finally failed to win over the love of J&K, which rejected divisions on religious grounds and chose secular India. The gloves are finally off, and India has chosen territory over people. People's Democratic Party leader Mehbooba Mufti said. She said the PDP always believed that any concession or final solution on J&K had to come from India. But today, the same country seems to be preparing to rob J&K of whatever little is left to protect its unique identity, she said. Valley of Flaws, on Kashmir troop surge. National Conference (NC) Vice-President Omar Abdullah questioned the government move to shift pilgrims and tourists out of J&K. State Road Transport Corporation (SRTC) buses are being deployed to bus people out from Pahalgam and Gulmarg. If there is a threat to the Yatra, why is Gulmarg being emptied, he asked. CPI-M leader M.Y. Tarigami questioned Prime Minister Narendra Modi's silence in the parliament over the issue. Hurriyat chairman Mirwayaz Umar Farooq said the removal of Article 35A was to change the demography of the state. The provision was negotiated by the regional electoral parties and is an article of faith, which should not be breached. Such measures will not change the reality that Kashmir is an issue and has to be resolved. The world is asking India and Pakistan to resolve it, and there are also offers to mediate, he told a Friday congregation in Srinagar. MS Mufti arranged late evening meetings with rival National Conference President Dr. Farooq Abdullah, People's Conference Chief Sajjad Lone, Mr. Tarigami and J&K People's Movement head Shah Fizal. Later, MS Mufti led a joint delegation of these parties to meet Mr. Malik. MS Mufti sought to dispel rumours fueled by the government order asking the tourists and Amarnath pilgrims to leave as soon as possible. After a brief discussion, we called on Mr. Malik ji and requested him to dispel rumours that have caused a sense of panic in the valley, said MS Mufti. Mr. Fizal, while questioning the government advisory, said, should Kashmiris also migrate to other places, or is it that our lives do not matter? Meanwhile, sources said Dr. Abdullah extended support to MS Mufti. Dr. Abdullah is likely to convene an all-party meet in Srinagar after Mr. Omar Abdullah returns to the valley. After meeting leaders of the parties, Mr. Malik informed the delegation that there were serious and credible inputs regarding terrorist attacks on the Amarnath Yatra. It is the responsibility of the state to provide security to all its citizens. Unnecessary panic is being created by linking this to all kinds of other issues. A pure security measure is being mixed up with issues with which it has no connection. The political leaders should ask their supporters to maintain calm, he said. The governor said he himself had clarified matters on 35A yesterday in Baramulla. Former Maldives Vice-President Ahmed Adeeb Abdul Ghafoor, who fled his country and was detained by Indian authorities off the Tuticorin coast on Thursday afternoon, stayed put on the boat anchored near the Old Harbour for the second day on Friday. Further orders were awaited from the government. Meanwhile, a law firm representing him has confirmed that he was seeking asylum in India. However, an official aware of the developments told The Hindu that India was working out the details for Mr. Adeeb's repatriation, which is likely to be done in the next 2 days. Mr. Adeeb could be escorted back to Mail by air or sea, but the decision that he would not be allowed to stay in India seems final. Earlier in a press statement, a law firm from Guernica 37 International Justice Chambers, which claims to represent Mr. Adeeb, said he has sought asylum in the country. The Indian authorities are therefore under an obligation to consider his request and to ensure that he is not arbitrarily handed over to the authorities of the Republic of Maldives, where he is at the risk of ill treatment, the statement read. Further, it said that Maldivian enforcement officials were expected to arrive in Chennai soon in connection to Mr. Adeeb's case. If India were to return him to his home country, it would be against the principle of non-refoulement, which makes it unlawful for a country to return an asylum seeker to a place where their life or freedom would be threatened, the firm said. It claimed that earlier, the Maldivian security services sought to coerce him into signing documents that would amount to a false admission of guilt and put his life, and those of his family members, in danger. The firm said that after being acquitted by the Supreme Court of Maldives, he was held under house arrest and was used as a political pawn by the state security forces to implicate members of the previous administration. The firm has also contacted the UN Office of the High Commission for Refugees, and the High Commission for Human Rights to act with diligence in considering his application and to ensure that his rights were protected. The 37-year-old fled the Maldives after he was summoned for questioning over the theft of $90 million from state coffers.